Most small businesses aren't sellable, not because they're unprofitable, not because the owner hasn't worked hard enough, but because when a buyer looks at the business, they can't see how they'll make money, especially after you've left. That's the gap. And it's fixable if you know what buyers are actually looking for. I'm Rowena Frith, and I've built and sold my own small business and other small businesses. And I work with business owners, particularly those over 50, who want options, not pressure to sell tomorrow. Let me share something that changed how I think about this. There are really only three ways a business comes to market. The first is the fire sale. The business is in trouble and you're losing customers, losing staff, fighting for survival. A buyer looking at this sees risk everywhere and the value is disappearing fast. And you have no leverage. You can take what you can get. The second type is the surprise offer. Someone approaches you out of the blue. It sounds interesting, but you're not ready. You don't know if it's a good price. You don't know what your business is actually worth, and you hesitate and the offer disappears. The third is the planned exit, and you're prepared. You control the timing. You can wait for the right buyer and negotiate from strength. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Only about 20% of business sales fall into that third category. Most owners think they're in category number 3. They're actually in category 2, a bit more opportunistic. One unexpected health scare, a change in circumstances in some fashion, and they're having to sell their business when they're not ready. So what separates a saleable business from one that struggles to find a buyer? It starts with understanding what you're actually selling. When you sell a business, you're not selling what you've built. You're not selling your track record, your years of hard work, your invested capital, your reputation. That's all history. You're selling the future. A buyer is asking themselves 3 questions. How will I generate a return on this investment? What's the highest probable return that I can make? And what are the risks that could stop me getting that return? This changes everything about how you prepare. Here's something that takes the pressure off. You may not have fully exploited the potential of your business. Maybe you've lost some of the energy. Maybe you don't have the skills or the funding to grow it further. Maybe you've just been running it comfortably for years, and that's fine. The buyer isn't buying your limitations. They're buying the opportunity to do what you couldn't do or didn't do. Your job is to make that opportunity visible and reduce the risks that that buyer sees. So now here's something that most small business content misses. Your business represents different values to different buyers. One buyer might want your customer list. Another wants your employees or your expertise. Another wants your location or territory, and another wants your intellectual property, your systems, your processes, your way of working. And another might want to integrate you into their existing operation and realize some synergies, creating efficiencies. This is genuinely hard for sellers because you have to think beyond what you value about the business to what someone else might value. But it's also very powerful. If you can identify 2 or 3 likely buyer types, you can shape your business to be more attractive to them. There's a saying that I like: make your business look like that of the buyer. When the business feels familiar and comfortable to acquire, they're more likely to proceed and to pay well. So ask yourself, who might buy this business and what would they be buying it for? Now, let's get to the elephant in the room. The single biggest risk buyers see in small businesses is this: personal relationships, personal clients, personal knowledge that walks out the door when the owner leaves. And if customers buy because of you, well, that's a risk. If there are decisions only you can make, that's a risk. If the financials only you can understand, that's a risk. And if key supplier or partner relationships are reliant on you, that's a risk. And when buyers see risk, they respond predictably. They lower the price. They add conditions. They structure earnouts that keep you tied in longer, maybe longer than you want. And they require extended handover periods, or they simply walk away. You can sell an owner-dependent business. You just won't like the terms. So let's get practical. What actually makes a small business transferable? The question to keep asking is, if I hand this business to a buyer, can they reliably run it forward and grow with it? There are 4 things that build buyer confidence. First is revenue they can project forward. Not just we had a good year in the last couple of years, but buyers want recurring revenue patterns that they can see into the future. A documented pipeline, customer retention rates. Can a stranger look at your numbers and forecast next year with confidence? And if the revenue depends on your personal relationships or your personal sales ability, that's a question mark. Second, can the operations transfer cleanly? This doesn't mean elaborate operations manuals. It means documented processes, even simple checklists, videos, supplier relationships that aren't locked in, quality standards that don't depend on your personal oversight. The buyer needs to see that the machine keeps running without you. And third, financials that tell a clear story, clean books, clear margins, predictable cash flow. A buyer or their accountant should be able to do due diligence without drama. If your pitch includes, trust me, it's actually more profitable than it looks, that's a red flag. And fourth, customers who stay when you leave, relationships documented and transitioned, service consistency that doesn't depend on you, proof that customers buy the business, not just you. This is often where the hardest work is, especially in service businesses where you are the relationship. There's one more question buyers are asking, even if they don't say it directly. How does this business transfer to me? And how do I reliably move it forward, grow it, make it more profitable? And for small businesses, this means thinking about the handover period. How long and what's involved? Key relationships. Who needs to meet the new owner? What would that transfer look like? How do I make sure that I get everything I need out of those conversations? Remember, many buyers are essentially buying a job or an investment that requires their active involvement. How reliable is that job going to be? That's what they're weighing up. And I'm not coming at this as a theorist. I built a consumer products business, the Saltbox, while I was still working full-time, which meant I had to design it to run without me from the start. Outsourced logistics, cloud systems, documented processes. Not because I was planning to sell, but because I needed it to be manageable. I grew it to over $1 million in revenue, and when I did sell it, the operating model was part of what made it attractive. The buyer could see how they'd run it moving forward. The lesson I took from that, I didn't build it to sell, I built it to live. And livable businesses are often the most valuable businesses. So where do you start? 2 questions to ask yourself. First, if you disappeared for 30 days, what would break? That's your dependency risk. Second, if a buyer looked at this business tomorrow, what would make them nervous? That's your transferability gap. Pick one thing in each of those categories and start there. You don't need to fix everything. You need to fix enough that the buyer sees opportunity, not risk. Making your business sellable isn't about selling tomorrow. It's about building something a buyer can see themselves running successfully. And that gives you options, whether you step back and keep ownership, or sell when you're ready, or keep both paths open. If this resonated, subscribe, and I share practical strategies every week for business owners who want freedom, not pressure. And remember, take care of yourself, not just the business. I'll see you in the next one.